Welcome to the Float Podcast, an entrepreneurial journey. My name is Nick Janicki, once a wide-eyed hippie with purple dreadlocks, and now the founder of the True Rest Float Spa, the fastest growing floating franchisor in the world, and CEO of FloatPod Technologies, the industry leader in float pods. Follow me along in my entrepreneurial journey with what will become the next billion-dollar industry to enter the health and wellness sector. Let's connect with world-class athletes, actors, musicians, doctors, industry experts, and explore the mindsets of powerful entrepreneurs. Let's get this floating party started. All right, welcome to the Float Podcast. I'm here with my special guest today, Loretta, and she is awesome. And she has a great story about floating, and she has broken a couple world speed records, right, on a motorcycle?
Yeah.
So it's super awesome. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
And, tell us a little bit, how you got involved in floating, how you heard about it, and then, we'll lead into how it helps you with the mindset of a racer and someone that you're 23 years old, right?
Yes.
And you've broken 2 world records.
I did, yeah.
That's super epic. So, tell us a little bit about it.
Thanks. So I first heard about floating from a few friends of mine. They weren't really making a whole lot of sense when they were telling me about it at first.
That happens.
Yeah, it's like a big tank thing filled with water and you float in it. And it was just kind of weird how they're describing it, but it sounded really great. But, just their pure enthusiasm, which means a lot when you're talking about anything,
Sure.
You can make anything sound good as long as you're excited about it.
And do you know how they heard about it originally? Or how long ago was this?
I'm not sure. It was about 2 years ago.
Okay.
I'm not sure how they heard about it, but, just by word of mouth, I guess. They just wanted me to try it.
So 2013?
2000, I think it was around, probably around 2013.
Okay, cool.
2012, maybe.
So they told you about floating, and then you heard about it.
Yes.
And then was True Rest the first one you tried?
Yes, True Rest was the first one I never even heard of. I didn't know it was a thing before then, really. And I just went in, to try it out. Came out with amazing. I just felt amazing. I didn't really know what, life was.
Okay.
After my first
you didn't know what life was? Okay.
I didn't know what was going on. I could barely, look at people. I was just happy.
Right.
I was in euphoria, pretty much. I had to just kind of sit down.
So you didn't go in with any pain or anything like that necessarily, but for you it was just, would you say it blew away your expectations, that first float?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, I had zero expectations. It just kind of sounded like a thing that you float in, just a little pod. They didn't tell me any of the benefits, so I went in there with a very clear, open mind. Came out just completely happy, clear about my life. Everything was wonderful. Totally pain-free, which is like the first time ever in my life where I was
so you
pain-free.
did go in with some pain.
Yeah, well, I've always had some neck pain,
okay.
always
Sure.
neck pain, shoulder pain, and lower back pain.
Okay.
I wasn't expecting any of that to, even be affected by my first float, but it was completely painless, totally painless.
Wow.
So I took advantage of that. I just kind of laid down for, I don't know, at least an hour at the spa still before I left because I didn't really
So
think
it totally
I could
blew your
drive.
socks off.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. And then how were subsequent floats?
They were amazing. They weren't, it's not quite like the first float. Every single float is different.
Right.
They all leave me totally painless. I sleep wonderfully after all of them. And, I just feel really good.
Sure.
I used to be really drowsy after my floats. I would just I'd make sure I had nothing else to do the rest of the day because kind of useless after that.
Sure.
But now when I come out of there, I'm really energized, really clear and focused, ready to go, which is what I love about it, and that's kind of why I do it now.
Okay, sure. And you were telling me before the podcast you're actually going in with a condition that the float completely eradicated pretty much for you, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
I've had eczema for my entire life, which if you don't know what that is, it's like a skin condition. Get like a little rash, it's like red, bumpy. Usually it's dry, very dry skin. Cracks and it's open. It doesn't really go away, but it's always itchy.
Which is probably pretty common for Arizona.
I think so, yeah. I've talked to a lot of people that have had eczema. I had it since I was born. I moved here and it actually kind of got worse because it was more dry.
Sure.
Long story short, it kind of spread. It used to be just, right on my arms. spread pretty much my entire body. It's like from my head down to my toes,
right.
like front and back, everything, honestly.
So pretty severe.
It was extremely severe, yeah.
Okay.
I couldn't sleep because I was in a lot of pain. I was very sleep deprived, and, you know, my self-confidence was very low. Once I started floating kind of more regularly, I noticed that it started to subside, all of it. So I got the pain relief, and then also my skin was smooth.
Wow. So how long do you...
Totally
smooth. How often do you go in, I guess?
About once a week.
Once a week for an hour. And since you've been doing that, and how long have you been floating for?
Now, I think I've been floating for about a year.
About a year. And it's not come back. That's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, my skin is totally smooth.
Wow.
It went away completely after probably about 2 months of doing that.
Right.
So it was, you know, to me, very quick. I had it for 23 years.
Okay.
Went away in 2 months after I was floating.
That's unbelievable.
Completely gone. Yeah.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about so obviously I say, you know, the environment meditates you. So floating is something where the environment meditates you, and you obviously felt that after your first float. Do you have any kind of meditation background, or do you have things that you could compare the physiological benefits of floating to?
You know, I used to meditate quite a bit. I meditate every once in a while now. I used to go into like the forest.
Okay,
really.
The nature.
The nature.
Right.
So yeah, I used to just kind of submerge myself in forests, trees.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, totally.
You know, total silence, just because I wanted to be with nature. Felt more connected that way.
Which that environment is very meditating as well. It's like scuba diving. For me, scuba diving is like literally underwater meditation. After a while, you're literally just like, you know, it's awesome.
I can't even imagine.
So
cool.
the environment meditates you, and, you know, so tell us a little bit about your 2 world records, and then did floating have any influence over your condition or your state of training or anything that, you know, during the actual race or not the race, but just breaking the record? Tell us a little bit about that. And tell us how you got into that too.
Cool. Yeah. So I started by just being kind of a motorcycle mechanic, actually. Okay. Yeah, I grew up, my dad was a car mechanic. My uncle got me into motorcycles. Pretty much once you get exposed to motorcycles, you don't go back to cars. That's just the way it is.
Because they're way cooler, right? Way faster.
They're pretty cool.
Right, all right.
So I went to school to be a motorcycle mechanic. I got certified with a few different manufacturers. And then I got my own motorcycle finally after completing school. My parents did not endorse this. Nice. I met
But now they're on board, I know, right?
They are.
So you've convinced them that this is the thing for you.
I think it's the enthusiasm.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
They even bought motorcycles after this.
Nice.
So I met a racer at the DMV, actually, when I got my first motorcycle. I saw him ride up on the, you know, at the time it was the best motorcycle. And, you know, I had to talk to him after that. Found out later that he had broken 11 world records.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's
and
insane.
He was looking for someone to kind of help him out on his bikes. And, you know, he wanted a girl. It was like, what better? He didn't want a girl, but it's like, when you meet one, it's like, oh, girl mechanic, please.
Done. Right. Nice.
So that's how I first started racing. I raced for the first time last year.
Oh, wow. So competitively, this is pretty new.
Yeah, it's very new. They still refer to me as a rookie racer, but you know, not very many, if any, other rookie racers really break world records their first time racing.
Wow.
So I learned a lot from my mentor. I also, you know, float very regularly. Mm-hmm. You know, and it has this way of kind of keeping you very calm. And when you're racing at high speeds, you need that kind of focus.
And what was your first world record? It was over 190 miles an hour, right?
My first world record was 163.
163?
Yes, yeah. I was on like a V-twin, which generally aren't the fastest bikes.
Okay.
The cool thing about that is, you know, it's not male or female. It's not at an age group. It's a world record. It's,
wow. So what was the actual record you broke?
It was 158 miles per hour. On the track, and I went 163.04, which was pretty good.
Holy cow.
That was great.
And now, what was your second world record?
It was in kilometers. It was about 200. I'm not quite sure what exactly it is.
Okay. Over 200 kilometers an hour.
Yes, yeah.
Holy cow.
And then my personal best top speed, I do a few different types of racing. In a mile is 195 miles per hour. And so that's really great, yeah.
Faster than I go. I think I've gone in a car maybe 100, 105 or something, so yeah, that's insane.
It's totally different.
And so I'd be really curious. So you were telling me a little bit about this before, that in your second world record, even your mentor was surprised by some situations that arose during it and how well you handled it. And you attributed that to floating. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Tell me what happened and how mentally or your mindset shifted because of the float, or I don't think you have enough time to even probably think. But tell us a little bit about what happened and how you were able to adjust yourself.
So it was in like a mile. It's a timed mile that you go through from like a stop through a mile, and it was 195 miles per hour, and the bike started kind of acting up, started shaking. I don't know if you know what a head wobble is.
I know what it is.
Like tank slap. Yeah. It's like when the handlebars go left to right.
And you're going 195
when you're going 195 miles an hour, you don't want that to happen.
Not so much.
It's not something you want.
Okay.
So, I reacted very quickly. It was like a more stabilizing, very grounded and focused reaction. Earlier in the day, I saw a woman go down on the track. I'm not sure what happened. She was going about 150 miles an hour when she went down, and
ouch.
Yeah, so, it happens all the time when people go down on the track. You crash a motorcycle at high speeds. It's not very pretty. And we had a camera on the bike at the time, and I showed him what happened. He was actually very surprised that I handled it that well, and that I got out with the bike still up.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
And is that the run you broke the record on?
No, that was a different run.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to get the bike up to speeds because of that issue that was happening.
Got it.
Yeah, it was incredible the way I handled it. I didn't actually even know I was capable of doing that.
Right. Now that is spectacular.
Yeah, I found that as I float, it kind of keeps you very grounded, and your emotions are very stable. And a lot of things happen with like anxiety. You get kind of stressed out, anxious. A lot of people come up to you and ask, what if this happens? What if that happens? When you're going 200 miles an hour, you don't want to think about what could happen.
Nor do you have time to think about it.
And you don't have time to think about it. So all these things that my mother talks to me about, what if this happens? What if that happens? She's always so worried. And some of that has to rub off on me. So it's just like a natural thing that it rubs off on me. So I float, and it just totally goes away. My anxiety, my stress, I'm able to go into the race clear-minded and focused, which is mainly why I do that.
Right.
I float before every single race.
You do?
Because of this, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So do you find, how long does that grounded, I don't even know what the verb is for that, being grounded, the groundedness or whatever, last for you? So is that something where you would need to do it a day before or the day of or 3 days before? Kind of what's your ideal in order to get into that performance mindset?
I think it would be probably about 4 days.
Really?
4 days beforehand. Yeah, it lasts a very long time for me.
Wow.
I think, the more you do it, the longer the effects last.
Sure.
It used to just be during the float. I would be able to think very subjectively about, what I'm doing. I would clear every issue, every problem, anything, that I questioned would just be solved like that.
Okay.
Inside the pod only. That was for the first little bit.
And then it just lasts a little longer and a little longer and a little longer and a little longer.
So now my whole life, I'm able to just handle
now your whole life.
My whole life, every issue.
All right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, tell me a little bit about, so you've been floating for about a year. How many times were you, so about once a week? So how many times do you think you floated total now, hours-wise? Maybe 30, 40 hours? Maybe more?
I would say probably around 40 hours.
40 hours.
Now, yeah.
So were there any sort of breakthrough, for a lot of people say their breakthrough is usually after, for me, I was similar to you. So I did my first float and I was like, boom, love it. This is now my life, totally loved it. Yeah. And so, but for some people it's 3 floats is what I call like the magic float. For some people it's like 6 floats or 7 floats. It sounds like your first one was your magic float.
I think so.
Now, would you say there was any other kind of breakthroughs as you kept going, or now it's just this almost like you're a student of floating and it's just this continuous journey?
I would say it's a continuous journey. Every time you go in there, at least for me, I'm thinking about, the first 10 minutes maybe, I'm thinking about, most recent situations in my life, things that have happened, choices I've made. And every single time you figure out something new about yourself.
And it comes up, and you're kind of like, oh, I have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Right.
And not only does it bring that to your attention, it doesn't just make you aware, but it helps you solve it, which is very cool for me.
Okay. So when you say it helps you solve it, it's because of the state you're put in that allows you to solve it easier?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Interesting.
It, it keeps you very calm when you're inside there. And in a way, it sort of detaches you, at least for me, it kind of detaches me from, the very natural emotional human state that we're in, the emotional body that we have. And it allows you to look at everything in your life from a very calm, logical standpoint, where a lot of us aren't usually.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a lot of things happen, emotions and, different relationships with people go on. But when you're floating, all of that's kind of just cleared out of the way for me.
Right. So what advice would you offer someone, let's say in their, late teens or early 20s that hasn't floated? Maybe they think it's, weird or something like that. What advice would you offer them?
Just keep an open mind about everything. And I believe that you can take something out of every single float. Even if it's a restless float.
Those are the best.
It's like, what does that say about you?
Right,
It's bringing something to your attention. You said that those are the best?
Those are the best because they're the most real. So, I have floats that are, luxurious, I would say. Like, I get it and I'm just like, whoa, and it's just like layers of stress are just like removed, and it's just like this magic experience.
Oh, yeah.
And then I have some floats I get in and 20 minutes into it, I'm going, uh-oh. Because it's like, almost there's like pressure and like I'm dealing with stuff, and then like 45 minutes it's like this epic battle of me like going through stuff, and then I'll get out and people ask, how was your float today? I'm just like, oh, that was so tough, but I don't want to say it was bad because it wasn't bad, but it's something I needed to go through. So it's not always this luxurious experience, at least for me. There's actual like life lessons and things that are being taught to me by being in that state. And meditation for me is the very same way. When I meditate, it's sort of setting my like foundation for the day, and so floating is very similar, and so I need that to just be who I am now. So like to be in my highest, I have to meditate or I have to float now, and so it's even harder than just not even knowing about it, if that makes sense. It's like now it's something I have no choice. I have to do to be who I am. It's part of who I am now.
Yes, that makes sense.
And so I think you're feeling that too, where it's like this is something you're going to do for life. It's now a practice. It's not a therapy. It's not rock climbing or whatever. It's something you have to do to maintain who you are at your core now almost, right?
Yes.
See,
oh my gosh.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it's just, forever growth.
Right.
Forever growth. That doesn't even make sense.
So where do you see yourself forever growth? That makes sense. Sure it does.
Eternal growth.
Eternal growth. So, where do you see yourself going with flotation? Do you think it's just something, no matter what you're doing, with the movement of flotation or the industry as a whole, it's something you'll always utilize no matter what?
Yes.
Pretty much, basically, at this
Absolutely.
point.
Absolutely. Yeah,
right.
100%.
Okay.
It's just so beneficial on almost pretty much every single level.
Right.
I keep getting surprised. I wasn't expecting to be more emotionally stable. I wasn't expecting
and I
to
love that.
learn more
More
about
emotionally
myself.
stable. That's a huge statement.
Yeah.
Just from floating.
Just from floating.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't have to, once you float, everything just starts the ball rolling, and then you just start growing and growing and learning more about yourself and the world and others, and just our relationships and why we are the way that we are. And
Interesting.
It's amazing.
Yeah. What would you say, was your most profound or most interesting or most, I love the word you use, surprising. What was your most surprising experience? Either during the float or something that happened throughout your daily life that you were able to recall that floating state and apply it. So obviously you talked about the incident going 195, and that was huge. Is there any other examples you could give on how you've applied it, or something that happened during the float that just surprised you?
Well, I would say, a lot of the times in relationships, there's going to be some headbutting, or there's some sort of, quarrel going on, or miscommunication or something. Sometimes I'll go into the pod just thinking about that on my mind unintentionally. Sometimes it just stays on your mind throughout the day.
Sure.
I think it's amazing how you can go into the pod with that on your mind still, still sort of unresolved, and then this happens all the time, by the way. Mm-hmm. And you go in there, and then it's just something happens to where it opens your mind up, maybe shifts your perspective a little bit, and the problem is now solved, or you've figured out a way to handle it,
right, or
to just, deal with that.
Right.
And that's something that's always surprising me and always I'm really thankful for.
Right. So this is your thing, so if you have something in your mind, you can go in the float pod and boom, it's solved.
Exactly. And I don't feel like I have to do anything extra to get there. Mm-hmm. And it's not like a whole bunch of hard work that I have to do. Just go in the pod and then it shifts my way of thinking.
Right.
And then it just naturally works itself out.
It's almost like cheating. It's almost like too easy. Right. It totally is. No, I mean, if I'm having anything go on,
true, though.
I'll go in, and then after I float, I'm like, man, even though I do it like a couple times a week, I'm still like, man, I should do this more often. It's like, I feel awesome every time. It's like, it works every single time,
It really does.
Totally. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. So what are your final comments you would leave with us in terms of, the mindset? I mean, it sounds like you've had huge shifts in the last year from a mindset perspective and breaking world records.
Absolutely.
I mean, all that's happened pretty fast. So what are some kind of, well, actually, I'll have you do this. So do me a favor, just close your eyes and just take a couple deep breaths. And then remember the state of floating, or remember a float or the state, and kind of try to bring that feeling back. And then just with your heart, give me one word that describes that feeling. Don't overthink about it. One word.
Okay.
What is that feeling? How would you describe it?
Well, I want to say euphoric, but it's more than that.
Hey, that's a good word.
What's another word for evolution?
Ooh, I like that. So euphoric, ascension.
Transformative.
Those are all very good words.
Transformative.
Yeah. Transformative.
Yes.
That's your word.
That's my word.
Sure.
Is that a good word?
That's a great word.
I think that's a good word.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
I did like ascension.
Yeah, ascension's good too.
That's good.
Well, awesome. No, thank you so much. That was great. And, thank you everyone that's watching as well and listening. We always have a video version and an audio version. And obviously you want to see Miss Loretta on the video. And so go watch that on the video. Super spectacular. And, thank you so much. That was awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Nick.
Floatpodcast.com.
Yes.
Thank you.